What's up everyone, welcome back here at the Neon Pavilion. My name is Niklas and today we are diving into yet another Eurovision spin-off event, but the one that we're talking about today is a little bit different and I'll get into that in a second. Today I would like to talk about the Pan-ArcticVision, an event that you maybe haven't heard of, but an event that has its second edition this year. It's an event that has a lot of potential and that sticks out from some of the other Eurovision spin-off we've seen in the past couple of years. And because I love talking about these spin-offs and the lesser known Eurovision events, I thought this would be the perfect thing to talk about. But it is a fairly new event, and I didn't know a lot about it before going into making this video. I only really knew about it because Eurowa has been posting a few articles about it on their Eurowa World, where they cover contests that are similar to the Eurovision Song Contest. So obviously I had to go out and do a little bit of research and look a little bit more into it for this video. And lucky for me, the people who are doing the Pan-ArcticVision were kind enough to help me a little bit.
So my name is Amund Sjølie Sveen. I'm the artistic director of Pan-ArcticVision.
The contest itself is created by an organization named Norting. They call themselves a People's Assembly, and they try, much like they do with the Pan-ArcticVision, to unite the North and the Arctic region, both through politics and through some more serious topics, but also through arts and music and film and all these things.
I have been working with these issues of the Arctic for many years, and I had a trip to the Faroe Islands to try to understand the position of the Faroe Islands, in relationship to Denmark and the colonial history and all these issues. And then I had a talk with a journalist, and I asked him, how is the issue of independence, of self-governance, how does that stand in the Faroese people for the moment? And he said, well, the economy is good, we're doing fine in the Faroes, so that people are not too concerned with the question of independence. But there are two issues. So the Faroese people cannot join the Olympics under their own flag and cannot join the Eurovision under their own flag. So that was sort of the spark of the idea. Can we transfer the Eurovision concept to the Arctic territories?
Much like in the Eurovision Song Contest, countries, or in this case territories, compete under their own flag with their own original songs. Each territory is represented by one act, either a singer or a group, and much like in Eurovision, they have new original compositions in it. So you would think that this was another Eurovision spin-off, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but when you dig a little bit deeper into the Pan-ArcticVision and you really start to understand what this event is about, you start to realize that this is more than just a spin-off.
I guess there are two answers to that. The first answer is that it's really similar. That's why we also borrowed the name, Pan-ArcticVision. So we are gathering artists from all the Arctic territories: Alaska, Canada, Northern Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Faroe Islands, and the northern parts of Scandinavia. And also we have Russian exile artists from the Arctic Russia. So yes, it's similar and people can vote. But then the other answer is that it's a very different project, because it's not about the contest, and I never call this a contest. The Eurovision, it has the tagline underneath, Eurovision Song Contest. In the Pan-ArcticVision, you will not find that tagline, because the meeting of artists is the most important, the meeting of the musicians.
One thing that really stood out for me when I talked to Amund is that this very much feels like a community event. And it's much more of a cultural event than it is a song contest. And I had to learn that myself in some sort of way, because you want to call it the Pan-ArcticVision Song Contest. You want to talk about it as a song contest. I did that as well a few times when I did my interview, but I quickly realized that that's not actually the case, and it's never being called a song contest. Instead, the tagline is a song, a community, and independence, and those are the three most important factors. While there is an element of competition there, you get to choose a winner. It's a much more free way of thinking about it, and it's much more inviting for the community, and the community actually gets to decide, at least they did that last year, if they wanted one winner or multiple winners. And I believe there was even a possibility for them to vote and say, we don't want any winners. In the end, 3 prizes were given out at the event last year. The most revolutionary song went to Northern Norway. The song that gives the most feeling of community and togetherness went to the Faroe Islands. And the most Arctic song went to Greenland. And not only did they have votes for the songs, they also had a special vote for who the audience thinks should host the next edition of the Pan-ArcticVision. And the votes were largely, I'd say, in favor of Greenland. So that's actually why we ended up with the contest going to Nuuk this year. And luckily for both us and for the organizers, the partners in Greenland were able to put on the event this year. I don't think I've said that yet, by the way, but the event is taking place this year in Nuuk, and it is taking place on the 12th of October, so only a week from now if you see this video when it comes out. But when I first started researching the Pan-ArcticVision, when I decided that I wanted to make a video about this, the first thought that popped into my mind was that this was a show where the Arctic regions, the Arctic territories, could show off their culture to the rest of the world, and it could be something that could help them gain more independence, but also help the more Western world understand what the Arctics are. Speaking to Amund and looking more into it, I realized that while that is definitely part of it, and I'm sure they would love to have international viewers watch the event, I don't think it's the main point. And in fact, you can tell that there's something that's even more important than that, and that's the fact that the Arctic regions can get together.
The Arctic is often, of course, sparsely populated. It's far away from the capitals in respective countries. So it's seen as a periphery, a bit exotic, a bit far away, different. It's seen very different from ordinary life, I guess. You know, there's a focus on nature, exotism. So part of this is also showing that life in the Arctic is in many ways like any other life. And the music is as good, maybe different, maybe not so different.
While these regions and territories share a lot of elements with each other, they are also very far away and they don't have the same way of connecting. It's not as easy as, for example, taking your car from Germany to France. So while these people share a lot of the same ideology, a lot of the same culture, they don't always get to see each other. They don't always get to participate in something together.
The idea of lifting northern territories, of building bridges in the north, in the Arctic, that idea stands very well, and it stands very well with our international partners around the Arctic. So there was a lot of enthusiasm. People think it is important to build these bridges across the nation-state borders.
So this is really a way for them to connect, for them to discover each other's music, to get to know people from all over the Arctic region. The singers get to meet and exchange ideas, they get to perform on a stage together, and most importantly, they have an event of their own. They have something where they can be them and they can participate, bearing the flag of the territory that they're part of. The Greenlandic participant doesn't have to wave a Danish flag, and they probably won't. Instead, they get to fly their own Greenlandic flag, something that they aren't allowed to do in international competitions. And the more you hear about that, and the more you think about it, the more you realize that this is 100% the Eurovision DNA. When the Eurovision Song Contest was created back in the 1950s, sharing music across borders wasn't as easy as it is today. So Eurovision was really a way for countries to show off their culture, show off their talent on an international stage, get international viewers, and this feels like much of the same. Yes, it is in a smaller scale because it is only the Arctic regions, but the idea of it and the idea of uniting Europe through song, that's the same here. It's just uniting the Arctics through song. You know, something that really hit close to me as a person from Denmark was when Amund talked about the fact that most people from Greenland have been to Denmark, but most people in Denmark have never been to Greenland, and they'll never go to Greenland. I don't think many people know this, but despite the fact that Greenland and Faroe Islands are part of the Kingdom of Denmark, we don't learn a lot about these territories. We don't learn a lot about these countries in schools in general. We learn a lot about our neighbors. We learn a lot about German culture. We learn a lot about Norwegian and Swedish culture. But Greenland and the Faroe Islands, despite being part of the Kingdom of Denmark, we very rarely talk about them. And for music, that's definitely also the case. Like, while most of the people in Greenland have probably heard most of the biggest artists in Denmark, we don't know a lot about the artists from Greenland. And for a lot of these artists, it's hard to get out there. It's hard to get their music onto an international stage because, well, for example, if they want to participate in something like Eurovision, for example, well, they have to battle with the Danish music industry. And while we've had a few artists from Greenland and from the Faroe Islands in Dansk Melodi Grand Prix over the years, of course, the latest we've had was Riley, who represented Denmark at Eurovision, but who was also the first person from the Faroe Islands to ever participate in the Eurovision Song Contest. A few years ago, I went back and watched a lot of the old Dansk Melodi Grand Prix shows, and one of the years, I believe it was back in 1980, there was actually reserved a spot for a Greenlanding and a Faroese song, and we heard those songs, and they were sung in their national language. But it's not something that's been prioritized by DR ever since, and I think it's a shame. I would love for more Greenlandic and Faroese music and culture to become part of the Danish culture, so we could actually learn about these territories that are part of the country. That was a bit of a tangent, but I do think it proves why the Pan-ArcticVision is so important. It's nice to have a forum where the territories can get together, talk about these issues, but also share their culture and share their music. I absolutely feel like they deserve this show, and I'm so happy that they are getting a show like this, because I truly believe that for these artists who maybe have never met other artists from other countries that struggles with the same things that they do or write about the same things they do, they now get to share the stage with some wonderful musicians from these other territories where they can share ideas, they can collaborate, and I really truly think a lot of good things can come from this. But in my humble opinion, I absolutely believe that countries like Greenland and the Faroe Islands should be able to participate in something like Eurovision or in the Olympics under their own flag, but it's a huge discussion. And let's try to stay on the topic of the Pan-ArcticVision, because that's what we're talking about today. But oh, it's an interesting thing. And I really do feel like this is something that's very close to my heart. And that's probably also why I decided to make this video, because I do think this geopolitical issue is something that, well, here in Denmark, but also in general, we just don't talk enough about. But let's get back to the event itself.
They can expect 10 great Arctic artists sharing their music from all around the Arctic in, I'd say, almost 10 different languages. That's a very big difference from the Eurovision, which today, you know, as we know, have become mostly an English-speaking event. We don't do that. That's one of our very strict rules. Local languages. I think through tuning into Pan-ArcticVision, you will also experience life in the North, gain knowledge and insight on life in the Arctic and the political issues that are connected to the Arctic and that are important today. So we're trying to combine, you know, these kind of the serious questions with everything that we know from the Eurovision about glitter and glam and confetti and joy.
While I didn't get to watch Pan-ArcticVision last year, I will definitely be watching this year. I think it's going to be a wonderful event, and I can't wait to hear some of the songs and possibly discover some new great artists. I think if you love some of the Nordic sounding acts that we've had in something like Melodifestivalen or Melodi Grand Prix, I think you'll absolutely love this show. But I do think there is something for everyone. Having gone back and listened to some snippets of some of the songs that were performed last year, there is something for everyone, and it isn't just only the typical northern sound that's kind of been known from artists like Kaino or Jon Henrik Fjällgren, who we've seen in the past couple of years trying to get to Eurovision. Because of course there exists multiple genres, multiple styles, and multiple types of culture in these Arctic regions. If you have the time to sit down and watch and enjoy the show, I definitely think you should, because you can tell that a lot of love and care is being put into this. And while it may not be the biggest television production, while they may not be able to match the level of staging, costumes, and glitter that we see at Eurovision, I still do think this very much has its place. And I do think that it stands out from something like American Song Contest, for example, that didn't really work out, because this very much knows what its purpose is, and it isn't trying to be a Eurovision copy. It's lending elements from Eurovision to create something that means something for the people that it's made for. And I think that's where something like American Song Contest maybe failed a little bit. So I do think that this show has its place, and I truly do both hope and believe that this can go on for many, many years in the future.
If you asked me a year ago, I would say that it was a one-time happening. But then here we are again. So now I say that yes, we're going to try to make this happen again after a second round. But we're of course very dependent on a local community in the Arctic wanting to join us. So that's part of the work, to see if there are more people than Vatsö first and then Nuuk now, if we can find more places that want to host this event.
Lastly, I'm just very excited to see a program being produced and broadcasted on Greenland. As someone who has dreamed for many years to have a Dansk Melodi Grand Prix being held in Greenland one day. It's probably never gonna happen, but one can dream, right? It's going to be lovely to learn a little bit more about Greenlandic culture and to see them produce something of their own. You'll be able to watch the show live, and you'll be able to vote as well, I believe, on the Pan-ArcticVision website. Like I said, it's on the 12th of October, and it's going to be at 6 p.m. Central European Summertime, so you can convert that to your own times in case you don't know. But that was a little bit about the Pan-ArcticVision. Did you know about this before? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know as well if you plan on watching this year. Thank you for watching this video. It was made in a little bit of a rush. I apologize. I'm in the middle of moving, so I wanted to squeeze this video in here despite being in the middle of moving, because I thought that this was such an important event to talk about that I wanted to share it so more people could get the chance to know that it exists and know that they can tune in and watch. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more Neon Pavilion content, and then I'll hopefully see you guys very soon. Take care.